Hi everybody and welcome to the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey and as always I'm joined by Sam Proof. Today on the show we're going to be talking about overcoming video objections because I know there are some people out there, and let me be really clear up front. If you don't want to make videos, that's fine. We're not here to pressure you into doing something you don't want to do. But we really want to talk to the people that want to do this, but just can't seem to bring themselves to do it. So we're going to unpack some of the objections that we hear all the time in terms of time, which we'll get to in a second. You know, the tech, the money, and also just generally overcoming some fears. So that's coming up on today's show. We are going out live to all the various places. So if you are watching live, do that hashtag Team Live thing. And if you're watching later on, you can always do hashtag Team Replay. Sam, how are you going?
I don't know. I feel like every week for the past 3 months has been pretty touch and go and really hectic and all that stuff. We had some sad stuff happen cat wise, and then I am working on a super secret project that I think is launching next week, but I don't know. I thought it was launching this week and then it didn't, so we'll see.
Yeah.
How's everything?
Things again, we'll talk about it more in the first segment, but time is such a blur at the moment, and there's just so much going on and so many things I would like to be doing, but I just don't physically have the time and the energy to get to them, which is actually our first objection. So we'll get to that in a second. I'm sorry about the sad cat news too, by the way. That is upsetting, but in some ways, like, you and Amanda have been very candid about how, you know, that's kind of part of the role of what you do, is sometimes not all the kittens make it, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let me just check in with the chat and we'll get started. So hello to Walter Strong III from The Huddle, who's looking forward to another great stream.
Oh, me too.
Saeed is watching from Germany. It was so hot today, I think I saw a koala bear. Okay. And he's on Team Cat and Team Live as well. I must admit, it's raining here today, and it's been raining for seemingly weeks at this point, and I really miss the sight of the sun. So
yeah,
I don't know if that's...
I'm on team it's too damn hot as well. So by the end of this stream, it's just like pouring down. It's not rain, it's just sweat. So
sure. It's the weather is very fickle at times, but I guess let's get into today's subject. So we really want to talk about these objections, and again, I don't want to convince you to do anything you don't want to do. So if you've made that decision, I'm not going to twist your arm to do something else. But if you are sort of struggling with some of these things, we do want to unpack them a little bit, and we do want to sort of encourage you to maybe think a little bit differently about them, be a little less critical of yourself probably along the way, and really get started, because there's really no substitute for that practice and getting comfortable on camera and in front of a microphone over time. But, you know, Sam, we kind of joke about it, and we're not always joking, at almost the beginning of every single show, and that's this time thing, because, you know, for you and I, content creation is one part of our life, but it's not the entire thing, and we have a lot of different things sort of vying for our time and our energy. And in some ways, this is probably the one thing that I'm most sympathetic about that we will cover today, because this struggle is very, very real. But I guess in terms of finding time, making time, how do you feel about this? Because I know you're somebody who has your fingers in a lot of different pies.
yeah, I mean, and I'm also somebody who wants to do all of the things. Like, I have the quintessential ADH brain of, like, it never stops coming up with new things to do. Like, that's not a problem for me. Ideation, I could sit down and spit out a million possible things, but then, like, having the time and focus to be like, this is the priority and we're going to do it. It's a lot. So, you know, the simple act of having a show like this one where somebody else is involved, and I have somebody that I have to, God, I totally lost the word for this, but I have to show up, right? Because, you know,
it's sort of that accountability.
Yes, an accountability partner, except for the couple of times that I haven't been able to. But, you know, those were legitimately big emergency things. So yeah, having like an accountability partner or something else along those lines where I'm like, I can't just be like, I really want to do this, but I also just want to stay in pajamas and watch Netflix. I think it's really important, you know, and a lot of that also goes into like not spreading yourself too thin, like taking the time to look at your list of like, this is the 20 million things I want to do, and going, these are the three that I can and should do.
Absolutely. And again, hello to the Stefan who's watching on the chat over on LinkedIn today. Thank you for joining us. I'm very excited about a lot of different things too. And like there have been projects that I want to play with. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that can be quite
Sure.
rejuvenating to a creative person to try different things. But I do have very particular priorities. And, number one is this show. And again, the other thing that makes us accountable is that this is sort of scheduled, it's promoted, people
Yes.
expect to see us at a certain time. So it's I often feel like I'm letting people down if we can't do this show. Um, and then
Yeah.
secondly, I
I
have a
think,
newsletter where I sort of talk about this show and other things as well. And there are other things like my podcast. There's the OBS content. They just don't happen every week, no matter how much I would like them to. I have to be a little bit more philosophical about those and just do them when I can. But I think in terms of video, certain workflows, and it's been the thing I've been saying all week is the thing about workflows is it's got to work for you, and everybody's different.
yeah.
Everybody has different preferences. Everybody has different comfort levels. In a lot of ways, I'm conscious of the fact that I made a video, I want to say last year, that has never seen the light of day just because I didn't get around to editing it. And in some ways, that's kind of the joy of going live, is that you can sort of do it. You have to be a little bit less perfectionistic about that. You need to roll with the
Yeah.
punches. If you trip over your words, you just go again. And it's not, and we'll talk about this more in the last segment in terms of mindset and overcoming fears. But even when things haven't been great, in recent weeks I've had some camera issues. My camera has just died mid-show, and
Yep.
sometimes we can bring that back, and sometimes we haven't. But the thing is, the sky didn't cave in on my head. No, nothing terrible happens, and in some ways, that's the thing I like about live is it forces you to be resourceful and to be okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, one of the things that really got hammered over my head when I was working at Mob Crush and like startups is the MVP, the minimum viable product. It's like, what is the least amount you can do to have the product you want out there? You know, which with live is, if you can hear me, awesome. If you can see me, good too. But that's
Mm-hmm.
it. Like, really, you don't have to have the bells and whistles. You don't have to have amazing transitions and video overlays and like stock footage and all of that stuff. It doesn't matter. It can be a stagnant shot. Just as long as people can hear you and probably see you, you're good to go, right? When you're talking about like a YouTube video, maybe the minimum viable product is going to be a little fancier than that. But this day and age, you're seeing so many videos out there that are just one take, and they're just trimming off the fronts and bottoms so that it doesn't start with like, and um, so yeah, it's really about what is the least I can do to get the result I want, right? So don't be a perfectionist, and then move forward.
And I know that that's very difficult for
That's
some of
hard.
us, but we'll talk about that more later on in the show. Just want to check in with the chat. So hello. So Walter Strong is saying, I agree with you guys. It took me over a whole year, before I became comfortable doing a live stream by myself. Saeed said, I just started to use what I already have and put it on my YouTube channel. Most recordings of workshops and other events. A little bit of editing and get it out there. And I think, like I spoke about this last week, and I even made a clip about this. But if you've got resources, you can repurpose them, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
And hello to Linnea Johnston, who's watching over on LinkedIn on what I imagine is probably a very rainy New Zealand day as well. Okay, so I guess the other thing too, and this is a bit of a theory of mine about the universe, is that different people want different things, and that's true of videos as a viewer. And you sort of spoke about not worrying too much about the transitions and the sound effects and all those 3,000 little cuts. But the other thing too is, I personally, as a viewer, don't want that. Like, I don't want to be that overwhelmed by a million moving things. That's just going to give me motion sickness. I'm
Hmm.
actually personally so much down for you just turning the camera on. I mean, it does help if you're on topic and you don't get distracted too much, but just that authenticity that comes from just being candid and talking to your
Yeah.
people directly, I think is kind of amazing. But I guess like if you and let's talk about the potential outputs here. So, what kind of
Yeah.
video content are you making? Because if you're doing a documentary, that's obviously going to take a lot more time to put together than like a 30-second clip on TikTok or YouTube Shorts, for
Yeah.
example. So, it may be something where you have to think about what time and resources you actually have access to, and just building it into your calendar, making yourself accountable, making sure that other people are aware of this thing and they might notice and they might tap you on the shoulder if it doesn't see the light of day. So,
Yeah.
do you have any sort of final thoughts on what we might do to, like, what I guess if someone had never made a video before, what would you say is the first starter project?
Yeah. I mean, I want to start with saying that like there's a lot of gurus out there, especially when it comes to like TikToks or any of the shorts videos that are going to be like, if you want to do this, you got to do a video a day or 3 video. Stop listening to those people. Look at your schedule and block it out. Like straight out, I have a Google Calendar, and every night it shows when I should ideally go to sleep, which I may or may not do, and when I definitely wake up because I have an alarm. And then I block out like take kids to school, do all this thing. This is probably when I'm going to eat lunch. This is probably when I'm going to veg out and watch Netflix. And what's left is my available time, right? So look at that for yourself. I can't speak to your available time and what makes sense. Don't take every single blank spot and go, I'm going to work all of those things. Unless you're like 17, then maybe you can actually pull that off. Anyone over 25, you need naps. So yeah, find a reasonable amount, like a third, a fourth, a fifth of your available time, and be like, this is how I'm going to do it. I will do one day where I do batch shooting. I will do, or even start with ideation. One day where I'm writing stuff, one block where I'm shooting, one block where I'm editing, one block where I post everything and do social media. And if it doesn't take you the full block, even better, right? And that's it. That's how you want to start, by scheduling yourself. And as far as what you're going to do, look at who you want to make content for and what those topics are. And if it's as easy as you just talking to the camera, then that's it. That's all you have to do. If you're trying to do something that is more time intensive, like a tutorial where you need to screenshot, I would highly suggest doing that in real time. You get something like OBS, you have a screenshot on the background, you put a little picture in a picture of yourself on top of it, just like all the Twitch streamers are playing games. You do that for any kind of screen shared tutorial, and you just record the whole thing, chop it up a little bit, and that's it. I think those are the easiest ways to start.
And another one of my personal theories about the universe is that there are basically two types of people. The first are really highly motivated by these big, hairy, audacious goals. And the grander and more exciting it is, the more invested that they become and the harder they work on it. And they may not actually reach the level of goal that they've imagined, but they achieve enough to get things done and be satisfied with the outcome. Whereas I'm not that person. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. If I think about it too hard before getting started, I will just build it up in my head and I won't be able to achieve that. And then I'll just think, what's the point, and give up. So my advice really, genuinely, and it doesn't matter if you're creating video content, if you're posting to social media, if you're writing a book, think about the smallest piece of action you can take on a
Yeah.
weekly basis and schedule that into your calendar. And
Yep.
once you've sort of mastered that over a period of time, then go back in and add additional things depending on, the time and the energy that you have available to you. And I guess we'll talk about this more in the tech segment next. But the other thing too is you can just grab your phone, you can just record while you're doing other things. I know there's a lot of tension and a lot of hot takes about whether audio podcasters should be doing video or not. And in some ways, I don't think video is the threat that a lot of people imagine. But I think in a lot of ways, if you can record that, there's nothing to say that you have to use it, and it can be really good feedback for you in terms of what you're doing well or where you might improve. And as someone who has a very loud inner critic, I am always amazed if I watch back this show or listen to my podcast that it's so much less awful than my brain has told me it is. So that's just my advice generally for that. So think about what you can do, chunk it up, put it in the calendar, and just have a go, because I think, and I was going to come back to this later, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning now. So, Saeed said, thinking that no one will watch it comforts me more than it scares me. And I think
Sure.
in some ways, that's part of the mental battle, because we want people to watch it, we want people to like it. But, we don't necessarily want critical people or random people or
Yeah.
I get a lot of, I guess because OBS is literally free software, and I get people from all kinds of parts of the world where English may not be their first language, and I don't really always know what they're asking or commenting on, which is fine. But yeah, so I guess, just be a little philosophical about it, and I think in a lot of ways you can't mandate how people receive you. What you can do though is focus on your own output, and I think that's really worthwhile. Business Growth Ready says midnight in the UK. Must be bedtime. Going to add it to the calendar when I get the time.
Nice.
Yes, you burning the midnight oils over there as well. So we're going to come back and we'll talk about the tech thing, because although Sam and I are incredibly nerdy, that does seem to scare a lot of people. So let's talk about it.
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them.
Mm-hmm.
So when Johan would get on my counter before, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. He loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I talk to him and be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And that's a segment from Sam's podcast, Just Kidding Around, which you can learn more about over at cuteavalanche.com. This is the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey. I'm joined by Sam Proof. Today we're talking about how you might overcome some of those video objections that people tend to have. We spoke a little bit about time already, but let's talk about tech. And again, I kind of alluded to the fact that Sam and I are pretty nerdy. We love the gear, we love the software, we love really getting in and playing with different things. But it can be quite overwhelming for a lot of different people. And one of the things that we say, Sam, is that if you're a live producer, if you're on screen talent, there are lots of hats that you're wearing simultaneously. And I think in some ways you can't prioritize all of those at the same level. Like there's just too much going on there.
Sure.
So what do you think, and again, in terms of low tech solutions, if somebody was interested in, say, going live, like what do you think some of the tools that might be worthwhile exploring could be?
Yeah. I mean, unless you have a very specific vision, it's as simple as if you already have a smartphone or a laptop or whatever other computer that has a built-in camera, that's it. You're good to start. It won't be amazing, maybe, depending on how expensive that phone is, but it's good enough to get you going. And that's all you need, and just, I think it's better to just start doing it and build the habit and the routine. And then once you've got it down, be like, how can I make this better? Switch from the phone to, a computer with a better webcam if possible. Right. But that's all. You'll probably already have everything you need to get started.
Sure. And I guess, we do talk about OBS Studio a lot. And again, that's probably not the place I would recommend beginners start. We often recommend tools like StreamYard or even Restream Studio as just a place to facilitate a conversation, whether that's just you talking to the camera yourself or you and a co-host or a guest. Both of those tools have free plans. There is some branding included in that as well. But in some ways, the other, and it's funny, like Sam just mentioned there, because we talk about the hats. One of those hats is just your ability to communicate and to present and to talk to the camera and be comfortable being on camera. And you do need to practice that. Like, there is no substitute for actually practicing that. And I think in some ways, if you are scared of being on camera, if you are a bit nervous about the tech, there are always opportunities to record offline, to not actually make it public, to not do it live necessarily. And you need to sort of think about your own comfort level in terms of what you'd like to have a go and achieve. And I just have to put this comment up that says we're not all as good looking as Sam and John. I think
and this really speaks to our last. We'll be on to this later, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
And it's interesting because I actually was on a link. I was watching a LinkedIn Live earlier in the week, and this is an anxiety that a lot of people have. And
sure.
Unless you are a supermodel, no one's really coming for the eye candy. Like, that's probably not the reason they're there. Unless you are this commenter, for example. But anyway, so I guess the most obvious thing, and Sam, you sort of mentioned you might already have access to gear, so that's certainly something to keep in mind. What can you do with your phone? Like, if you already have a smartphone with a camera and it's a decent camera, you can certainly start there as well.
Yeah, and John mentioned like using StreamYard or some of the other software that's out there, but almost every single major video streaming platform has a mobile app. So you don't even need any of those. Like, you want Instagram or YouTube or Twitch or YouNow or any of those things, you can do it from the phone directly. It won't multicast to all of the different platforms, like I like to do. But if you've got a following in just one place, right? If you just have a few people already following you somewhere, that's a good enough place to start. And again, you build out to multicasting in the future. And even if you don't have a following anywhere, be like, I want to speak to business professionals. Then maybe you're going to just focus on LinkedIn, which actually don't know if their mobile app does have live streaming. They may be the only ones who don't at this point. But, if there's a specific niche that you're trying to fill and that audience exists, like gamers on Twitch or the creative people on YouTube, whatever it is, just go to that one platform. I would not try to multicast right away. You suddenly go from paying attention to one chat to paying attention to 8 chats. That's a lot. If, God forbid, they all start to pop off, you're going to miss stuff. So I think, keep it simple. Go to your phone, download the one app you need, and stream right to that particular platform.
Sure.
And then you might want some kind of thing to hold your phone.
Yes, that's a particularly nice one, actually, Sam. You'll have to tell me about the brand of that later. But anyway, in some ways, it only takes one prop for us to become completely distracted. But that's the joy of live. So in some ways, like, I don't be too daunted by the tech and the gear. You can start with what you've got access to. We'll talk about that more in the next segment. But I guess the other thing is we have a lot of access to a lot of information, and YouTube is such a great resource. If you don't know how to do something in your streaming software, your editing software, you can go off and watch tutorials about them. They're readily available. You can check out the documentation. It does require a little bit of learning sometimes, depending on what you're using and how powerful it is, because there is always that trade-off between just embracing the constraints and, having default templates and maybe pushing the envelope a little bit further. But in some ways, it's a weird thing about me is I'm actually quite risk adverse, but I'm not scared of technology because I've played with it long enough to know that most problems are reversible. Like, if I make a mistake, I can often just control Z to undo, or I can just redo it again. It's not sort of a mission critical thing. And I think we talk about the tech in twofold. One is just being comfortable with it. And again, that'll come with time, that'll come with practice. But the other thing is just getting to know it a little bit to know what its quirks are. And you will make mistakes, especially if you're doing things live. And don't stress about those too much, but you'll know for next time what not to do. So definitely keep that in mind. Yeah,
and even if you've already done the live or you've already put the video out, you can redo that topic again, time and time, again. And that's what a lot of those top streamers do. Like every beginning of the year, it's how to make it on YouTube in 2024, how to make it on YouTube in 2025. And there's maybe one thing different this year than there was last year, you know? So,
and I guess the other thing too is like your audience is potentially growing and changing alongside you.
yes.
And we've done, between the two of us, we've done some version of using the OBS Studio virtual camera probably 8 times now. And sometimes people in your audience just aren't ready for it. And then you do it again 3 or 4 months later and they're much more receptive and you've had more time to practice it. You're more comfortable in camera. That's kind of the other thing too, is just that we often feel like we've said something once, we never need to say it again. We don't want people to get tired of our message and sound repetitive. But the truth is, 1, they probably never saw it in the first place. 2, they've already forgotten because there are so many things vying for their attention. And 3, you don't internalize anything by hearing it once. There's a reason why, they play ads over and over again. There's a reason why you actually need to study instead of just read the textbook one time.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's repetition is key. So and depending on the format and the platform, like if you're doing a live stream, I think there's a lot more chance that you'll have a specific core group of repeat viewers, whereas if you're doing like TikTok or YouTube Shorts especially, 99% of those people are seeing you for the first time. Every time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Stefan saying if it's not on YouTube, it doesn't exist, which I think is fair. And Saeed is saying, how many stream decks do I need before starting my first stream?
So you're gonna need at least 2 of the normal original ones. Then you're gonna want one of the small ones that'll let you select different profiles, 2 of the foot pedals, and then like 6 of the giant Jamba Mambas. And then one of the ones with the dials on it. No, you don't need any.
Yep.
But you will love it.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing. Like I have 2 of them, not currently connected to this computer. I've got the extra large here, but I'm running out of desk space, and in some ways that's just me not putting things away. But anyway, you don't really need anything, and I think in some ways, like if you do want to dig into specific tech, if you've got questions, just let us know. Like on the videos, we'll try and answer the questions as well as we can, or point you in the direction of some resources. But again, I feel like if you're there predominantly to share a message, to teach something, to have a conversation, you don't need to worry about green screens and, video backgrounds and splashy things, because I think in some ways they can be quite distracting too. So, think about what the heart of your content actually is and how you would like to share that. So this is the video and live streaming show. We're going to come back and talk about the objection relating to money.
Hi, I'm John Lacey, and in Build a Presentation Muscle, I want to talk about finding your voice, refining and sharing your message, using tools and technology to share that message, and looking after yourself as a creator.
And that's a promo for my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, the podcast all about showcasing your expertise through content creation, which you can learn more about over at johnlacey.com. This is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking about overcoming video objections. So what are those things that maybe are stopping you from getting started, or maybe you're just using as an excuse? Let's be real and have a bit of tough love today. One of the ones that does crop up is about money, and we know that some people are doing it tough in this economy. But I guess, first of all, you don't need a fancy studio. And in some ways, the last thing I want you to do when you're starting is to spend $10,000 worth of gear. Because if you do this for a month and decide you hate it and you never want to do it again, that's money you're never going to get back. Even if you do resell it, you're not going to cover those expenses. So, we've spoken about starting with the tech you already have. So what kind of things do you think people might have access to, Sam?
Sure. I mean, we've talked about, having the studio in your hand concept of the phone and whatnot, but other things that you're going to really need are like a nice background, just a good wall in your house that is, maybe not quite as busy as mine. People always say, "Oh, it's such a great background." I hate my background. I could do so much better. Um, you want light. You want to make sure that you're not being backlit by like the sun, but having access to natural light from a window is great. In most cases, unless it's directly on you, then it could be a little much. It could be too contrasting or blow you out and stuff like that. But you don't need much, right? A good wall, a camera, and some light, and that's really it. Unless there's something you're specifically doing in your content that you need props for or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And again, like, whatever you've got access to, and you may have a web camera, even if it's just the one that's built into your laptop, it's probably not going to be the greatest quality, but you don't need the greatest quality to get started.
Yeah.
And in some ways, you talk about the importance of lighting. If you're doing this during the day, then by all means, if position yourself in front of a window, you can use all kinds of artificial lights, and again, they don't have to be Elgato key lights, for example. They could just be a much cheaper LED lamp that you can position in such a way to light you up. So there are all kinds of things you can do. There are also a lot of software out there that is either literally free, sometimes open source. Some of the products out there like StreamYard, like Restream Studio, they have sort of this tiered pricing, and the free version might include some of their branding, but it is literally free. So again, if you're just working on trying these things out and getting a sense if they will work for you, you don't have to spend any money up front. If you are concerned about whether a tool is actually going to work for you, there are usually plans to pay by the month, and I think that's a really good thing. Like, pay for the month, try it out during that month, make sure you put it through its paces to make sure that it will actually work for you before you commit to like an entire year, for example. And I know I'm one of those people that is really enticed by that lower that discount for an annual plan, so I often go for that. But if it doesn't make sense for you, you don't have to do it. I guess the Seeds says also, get rid of the idea of making money out of your content, at least for the first X months.
This was something I wanted to speak to,
Sure.
And then he put this in the chat, and I was like, I think the flip side of putting a lot of money into streaming or making video is the thought that you're going to make money in the end, and that it takes a lot. Like, the people who are really making money, it is the top 1% of the top 1% of content creators online. The people who are paying like their phone bill might be the top 2%. It's not something you're going to go into and 3 months down the line, you're going to be like, woohoo, hundreds of dollars. It's not going to happen. Like, you would have to just have such an amazing, not even just work ethic behind you, but just production team and other things of that nature to make that turnaround. So don't think that's going to happen right away or possibly ever. And you will save yourself a lot of disappointment. Yeah,
and I think the other two things that people often get into their head is that they'll enter the YouTube partner program and be rich, which is not, like, I was in that program for 10 years and I think I made $100 for that entire time. And admittedly, I wasn't putting out content all of the time, and there were other factors in there as well. But people have this really irritating habit of pointing to that one outlier who has set the world on fire and going, everyone can do that. And marketers especially will be like, if you give me $10,000 a month for my my mastermind program, you too can be that person.
Yeah.
And it's usually not true. But the other thing too is a lot of people want to rely on advertising other people's products to make money. And again, that's not a great way of making money. You're much better to align it to your own business goals, or to sell your own products and services.
For sure.
And we have these little ads during our show, but they're really just to promote other pieces of content that we want you to check out. So take all of that with a grain of salt. It's not to say that you can't make money, but it is a lot of work. And just if anyone tells you it's easy or it's a get rich quick scheme, just be very, very wary of those people.
Yeah. Just to put this into context, as a quick case study, I won't give you the entire 7-year run of Cute Avalanche, but somewhere around our 6th year, we hit, I think, 10,000 followers on our Twitch, and we started to actually push some attention over to our YouTube. At about 4 months, we were able to take a YouTube channel that already existed, but just we weren't putting a lot of focus on, and get it to the point where it could, apply to the YouTube partner program, and it made it. YouTube itself for, this kitten cam, we're lucky to see $100 every other month. And it's making a lot of content, right? So yeah, that's your quick full disclosure on what it looks like to be a content creator. There's a lot of other avenues that we have going on that we're pulling little bits of money here and there. And yeah, it really comes down to having a very wide net of like, here's a myriad of ways we can pull advertising dollars or sell merch or do sponsorships or, 10 other things. So again, just go into it with a realistic expectation that you're not going to come out of this rich tomorrow. So be very careful about how much money you put in to start, because even though they tell you it takes money to make money, that's not what this is about.
And it's interesting, and I don't want to get on my my soapbox too much, but I see a lot of like small businesses, like single people operations that will pay for 40 pieces of random software or apps that piece together their business each month, and it just seems so deeply problematic to me for a whole bunch of reasons, but not least of which the fact that you're paying $20, $30, $40, $100 per subscription. So keep that in mind. This question from Linnea, it's not strictly about the money aspect of it. And so she writes, do you guys have any suggestions for preventing light reflecting off your glasses when you're on camera? I guess in full disclosure, neither of us normally wear glasses, but in some ways there are a couple of things, and some of them relate to the glasses themselves. There are filters, I think anti-glare filters that you can actually get applied to the lenses. And again, as someone who doesn't wear glasses, I don't have a lot of detail on that, but I can see what I can find out. But the other thing is just thinking about, if you do have lights, how you're positioning them. And often you just, instead of coming straight at you, you might actually want them a little bit above you, a little bit angled to the side, or even potentially, and again, it depends very much on your space. You might even want to bounce them off a wall or have a little bit more diffusion of that light.
Yeah. So
was there anything
I don't know
else
if
that
this
you
will
wanted
actually,
to add there?
so like, yeah, if I was wearing glasses, I can't really see if this is reflecting, but I have a classic 3-point setup. So my lights are 45 degrees off of me in 2 different positions. And then technically the third point of light would be this backlight, but that's more of a artistic thing. You could backlight, and that would give you your traditional 3-point light. That is probably the easiest way if you have the space.
And I mean, I should say, like, my lighting is very much just lighting me and the green screen behind me. So if I do actually raise things like my coffee mug in and put them in certain places, the light will definitely bounce back off them. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in terms of lighting, but those are a couple of things that you might like to think about. So Saeed does wear glasses, so he's has a helpful tip here. So I also wear glasses. Try to create a wider angle if you use actual lights until you cannot see the reflection anymore. Also, lowering the brightness of your monitor helps. So
yeah, that's a good idea.
That's definitely a consideration. So thinking about where the light is, and again, if you're working with natural light, it's great. That's usually inexpensive, but it's also subject to change. Linnea and I are very much in rainy climates at the moment, so those are things to keep in mind. But honestly, those might be a couple of things to explore. But I certainly wasn't distracted when I watched Linnea's live stream during the week by the glasses or any reflection on them. So I think you're doing well there.
And just for in case anybody else is out there and you do have contacts, but the glasses are important to your sort of personal brand, you can Drew carry it, where you wear the contacts and then just have frames without glass in them for the look. That's probably the easiest.
Sure. Okay. Walter is saying that he agrees with Saeed as well about the position of your lighting based on the space that you have available to you. Yeah. So that's definitely something to think about. But in a lot of ways, try these things. Just record locally and just see if they're a problem. And I'm happy to take that offline if you like, Linnea. So again, if fear of not having enough money is something that's stopping you from getting started, think about the things you already have access to. Just grab your phone, record 30 seconds, a minute of you talking about your subject. You don't necessarily need to make a lot of edits or do anything too fancy, but you certainly have access to tools. There are many video editing software out there that are free or inexpensive. And there seem to be more and more of these every single day. We've traditionally been big fans of CapCut, although because it's TikTok and ByteDance, there's a bit of question mark over that politically, right. But we did a whole show on that and we won't get into that again. But, there are different ways. And again, I think in some ways it's tempting to think of any of these excuses as a reason, but really they are excuses and we just want you to get started. So we're going to come back and talk about the fear because I think in some ways that's probably the thing that's most likely keeping a lot of people from actually starting.
If you've been watching us for a while or this is your first time and you're thinking, Sam, John, this is great stuff, but I'm wearing a lot of hats already and I don't need to add this to my list of things that I'm doing, but I really want to live stream, I've got you covered. I've been a freelance technical director and stream operator for 20 years, and I can help you either with one-on-one counseling, setups of shows, or even run your whole show for you. Get in touch with me, samproof@gmail.com, or find out more at samproof.tv.
And you can certainly reach out to Sam if you need help with those live production services. So this is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking about overcoming video objections. And again, this is only for people that want to make video. If you don't want to make video, that's fine. We're not going to twist your arm or anything. But let's talk about the fear because in some ways, I think this is the thing that will paralyze a lot of people. It will stop them from getting started. And there's a lot of different parts to this, and we'll try to unpack some of them today. But, often the thing that we hear is people don't like the way they look. They don't like the way they sound. So I guess, first of all, Sam, how do you think we should think about those two things specifically?
Yeah, I mean, that is probably one of the things that I hear the most often when I ask people what's holding them back from live streaming, which, by the way, for anyone out there in our chat right now, like, what are your number one fears on live streaming or video creation? But yeah, when it comes to things like look and sound, like it's so hard to get past that because that's such a thing that is built into our core being. But I just feel like we just have to beat it over your head that it doesn't matter. Like, go scroll through TikTok for half an hour and you will see if the algorithm is nice to you, just how much that does not matter, right? Sure, there are beautiful people out there. There are people with angelic voices doing content. And then there are not the total flip side, like there are just everyday people. And I don't consider myself, not to offend John, but either of us to be like going to the Met Gala beautiful. I think we're pretty standard, on the attractiveness scale. There are just hundreds of thousands of people out there putting out content. Good Lord. And yeah, you don't have to look amazing. You don't have to sound amazing. The things that, make you unique will make you stand out, actually. So, it's just something you have to get used to, is that is not the standard. We are not Hollywood. Nobody's out there casting us. You're casting yourself. So don't get in your own way, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting, and I was reflecting on this during the week, but Garen Bellany was one of the first people that told me to get the Sony ZV E10, which is the camera I've used for a couple of years now, and I really love this camera. And when I was having some battery issues with it recently, I was like, I can't tell you how much I love this camera. Like, I was just going to drop a couple of $1,000s on a brand new one of the exact same model. But when he told me that, and like with this focus on having high resolution and 4K recording, my initial reaction was like, my terrible skin in 4K. I don't think I really want to sign up for that. And
Right.
one of the weird quirks about this is it does actually have some sort of beauty filter on it. And I must admit, the first time I tried the camera, I thought that's kind of weird. I really need to go and turn that off, but then I never did. And I've just left it on. And I've had to go back to different webcams recently, and it's bizarre how confronting that has been for me,
Sure.
from both Logitech and Elgato. So in some ways, the gear, and again, it's not necessarily directive for a new person to go off and buy new expensive gear, but good gear will make you sound better, it will make you look better,
Yeah.
and potentially that will add to your confidence quite a lot. But
Yeah,
again,
and I was going to say, and we're in this weird time in history where there are just so many filters and things you can do to mess with it. And if you just can't find anything that makes you feel comfortable in your own skin, there are virtual avatars that you can just voice.
again, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, and we have a common friend that does that, and it's really cool the way that she does do that. But if you're trying to build a relationship, I don't think there's any substitute for just showing up as you are
agree.
and being real. But I guess the point that I made earlier that I just want to repeat now is that unless you're a supermodel, no one's coming to you for the eye candy. They're coming to you for the information, the solutions, potentially the entertainment,
Right.
and just the connection. So, and as someone who can be quite self-critical, nobody is critiquing me as hard as I'm critiquing me. So, like,
Yes.
people don't care that I tripped over and said something weird at minute 5 of the live stream or whatever. Like, no one is doing that. And you have to really get somebody on a particularly unhinged day for them to go for you in that way. So, okay. I just want to check in with the chat, and this is a bit of a tangent, I think, but Saeed is saying, for me, language was initially a challenge, especially creating content in English as a Moroccan living in Germany. Now I just don't care and I roll with it. And I must admit, like, that was a concern I think that Saeed expressed to me before he came on our show. But like, there's no problem. Like, we communicated really well.
Yeah.
Again, except for the fact that I was having camera issues that week. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, nobody is expecting you to be perfect in the way that you're probably expecting yourself to be perfect. So just let
Sure.
it go.
Yeah. And I think I get so many people on the flip side who are just like listening to the chat and like trying to communicate to me in chat that are like, sorry for my English. And I'm like, I totally understand you. You're amazingly good at this. Don't worry about it. Like, if you have a simple grasp of it, I'll be honest with you, most Americans have a simple grasp of it. So there you go. You're going to be fine. You're going to be totally fine.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I guess there is that element to it. But yeah, in some ways, like, just do it. And that's such a cliche, but there is a degree of exposure therapy that you just have to do this often enough to get comfortable with it. And even, 15 odd years ago, when I was making YouTube videos fairly regularly, I think I stopped for like 6 months, and then I tried to make one, and I just stared at the camera for like 40 minutes, not knowing what to do, and it was so uncomfortable. So even if you've taken a break, you probably need to get back into the swing of things. So don't be too critical of yourself. But I think it's worthwhile to experiment with different ways of working. And I know some people that just turn on the camera, they talk for an hour, and then they cut it down to like 10, 15 minutes worth of content. That would irritate me so much. As a person who needs structure in the world, like, I would much rather have my points planned out, or maybe even a script that I read out verbatim, because that's the other thing. And people have such strong feelings about scripts and teleprompters and that kind of thing. But the first time I used mine, I recorded a 2-minute video in real time in a single take. And I'm like, you have no idea how much easier that made my life than me trying to remember what I was trying to say, stuffing it up 30 times, and then just getting annoyed. And I told Sam about this a few weeks ago, but and I'd forgotten until quite recently, but there are videos on YouTube where you can see I'm getting quite angry by the end of it because I've done just so many takes and I'm just like, I don't even care anymore. I'm going to say it.
Yes.
I don't care how angry I am. So again, find something that works for you. And that's been the thing I've been saying all week is the workflow needs to work for you. But I guess the other thing that people are sometimes fearful of is that they say the wrong thing, especially in a live situation, or they inadvertently share something they didn't intend to share. And those are potentially big issues. And again,
Yeah.
I guess, first of all, if something has happened that's maybe a little embarrassing, you can go in, you can take down that content, and it doesn't need to live forever just because you did it live, for example.
Yeah, and if you're, like a live streamer on YouTube and you feel like that is something that you're concerned about, that you have a tendency to overshare or say things that you're going to regret, you can, as one of the settings, set your YouTube live to archive to unlisted when you're done, so it is immediately no longer public.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's another thing. But again, in a lot of ways, and I hate to keep saying this because I think people are always looking for a shortcut. They always want to have a sexy marketed solution to the fear. But in a lot of ways, it's just showing up regularly. It's practicing. It's watching and listening back to these things. And I know that can be excruciating, but it's the way that you'll learn what you're doing. And if you do need to make some adjustments or corrections, you'll find that out. But also, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, if you've got an inner critic that's telling you everything you do is crap, and you watch it back and discover you're not crap, that's going to help you a lot as well, just in terms of mental health and emotional stability. So I kind of do recommend that you do get in the habit of watching these things back. We mentioned on a recent show that there was a woman who had been doing stand-up and sharing her stand-up segments on Reels.
Oh, yeah.
And then she ported them over to YouTube, and she got all these really negative comments. And initially, she just assumed it was sexism and just trolls on the internet. But it turned out that because the Reels could be longer than the YouTube Shorts, a lot of those videos were talking about how great she was at crowd work and then not showing the crowd work, or setting up the joke and then just never getting to the punchline. So it is a good idea to sort of take a step back and watch the thing you're putting out into the world just to make sure that it's okay. And again, like, I don't even want to get into the whole bone conduction thing that makes the way you hear yourself when you're actually talking different to the way that you hear yourself when you're recorded. But again, it's just something I think you need to practice. You just need to get used to it, and you need to get more comfortable with it. So
yeah, I mean, and the difference between seeing yourself in the mirror as opposed to the inverted, video view is very jarring for some people as well. Then you just need to get used to it.
Absolutely. And I see certain people on TikTok that they'll do it the entire thing reversed, but then they'll have a sign that they want to hold up, or they've got a t-shirt, and then they flip it around just for that segment, and then they flip it back again, which is so confusing for me as a viewer. But Saeed writes that watching my own recordings was a game changer for me. After the first ones where I cringed, I now really enjoy watching my own stuff.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when we started this show, we didn't do it live. We did it pre-recorded, and I would have to go in and edit these things. And it was really interesting how much I learnt by re-watching and re-listening to these recordings. So don't be too scared of that. And I know it can be painful at first, but I really encourage you to push through because the rewards are quite great. I just want to check in with the chat. Chocolate Quilts is saying hello from Los Angeles. Apparently driving, so hopefully we don't distract you too much. Keep your eyes on the road.
Stay off the 405. It's murder right now.
Business Growth Ready says, I'm beautiful, according to his mother. I remember hearing that when I was in the pram. And again, I don't want to cause an international incident, but Farquad writes, don't worry about your English. American English can't be learned. It can only be experienced.
That's fair.
So, if there is something in particular that you're struggling with, if you want to bounce some ideas off us, let us know in the chat, wherever you happen to be watching this. We'd love to help you out. But in some ways, the thing that I always say is that, you you'll get feedback by doing things in a way that you won't get when you're just waiting to feel confident enough or ready enough to get started. So you really do need to get started. It's that imperfect action. It's just getting going in that first place. So I'd encourage you, like, think about that small action that you'd like to take this week. Maybe it's recording a short video. Maybe it's going live for even 5-10 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour-long show in the way that we do this one. But just have a go. And it could be that maybe you record it, maybe you watch it back and you go, hey, this was a good experience. I'll do it again, but I'm not ready to share this yet. That's perfectly fine as well. You're building a whole bunch of different skills in this process, and that can potentially take time. But if you don't get started, it'll never happen.
Yeah. And, find your accountability, whether that's, a partner that you're making the project with, or just other people that you're saying, I'm going to do this every Tuesday. Come at me if I don't put it on there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, we talked about the actually scheduling and promoting these things. And once that's out in the wild and a few people have said they're coming to see it, then you really have to commit properly. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But Sam, as we begin to wrap up, where can people find you? What's your content? Find you on social media, all other things?
Yeah, you can head over to samproof.tv, scan that QR code, and watch for my announcement about the super secret project, which hopefully is launching next week. I will make a lot of noise about it. And if you did not get enough cats today, head over to cuteavalanche.com and find our 24/7 live stream and follow us there. Thanks for hanging out.
And if you want to catch up with me, you can head over to johnlacey.com. There's a whole bunch of social links at the bottom of those pages, plus the podcast and a whole bunch of articles on live streaming and video and content creation and all of the things. But thank you so much for your company today. It's been great to hang out with you and have so much great stuff happening in the chat. Saeed writes, I do a lot of Zoom meetings that I also record. It's more of a safe space where you can see the audience and their reaction. It helps me get more confident for the live streams and other content. And that's the thing, like, if the idea of going live or posting something publicly scares you, then start in a much more gated environment where you're going to have people that love and support you and aren't going to be mean to you. There are all kinds of different technical ways, but certainly doing it on Zoom would be one of those.
For sure.
Walter's got a question here too. What advice would you give to a person on finding the right community to be part of, being around like-minded creators? Sam, do you have thoughts on that one?
I mean, I think this has to get pretty granular on what that looks like, what that niche is, but start by Googling it, just be like, whatever the topics are, Google it and see what comes up. You can also go to Google Trends and kind of get more from there as well. And really, if nothing is clear, I would just default to YouTube, second biggest search engine in the world. It's got the community.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I think the other thing is where that community practically lives, like in terms of tech, because some people hang out in Discord, some people hang out in I can't even think of the name of it anymore, the audio chat room place. Some people hang out on LinkedIn, some people are on YouTube. So, if there are people out there in those places, and those are places you like to hang out, then it's a good place to start. I mean, it's a great question, and I have been thinking a lot recently about what we might do to bring more creators together in real time. Obviously, we love this show, and I think at some point I'd love to do some panel type discussions with maybe two guests at the same time. And I guess the other thing I was thinking about too is LinkedIn audio rooms. So they're not recorded, they don't have any video, but anyone who's participating can raise their hands and come and talk to the audience. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, let me know in the chat, and I will sort of dig into it a little bit further. Business Growth Ready is saying cheers. Chocolate Quilts is saying perfect. So have a great weekend. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon. Next week we're going to be talking about another 4 of our favorite OBS Studio plugins. So if you are on the OBS nerdy side, come hang out with us for that one. Just keep an eye out on the invites and all the various places. Don't forget to like and subscribe. and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.